In today's lesson, we will be talking about the aggregation of marginal gains and how understanding and applying this principle can help you grow your business. The African homework 10 page.
That'll be $47,000 for this year's
We will be
tuition.
having another 5-hour test this Saturday on
If you go
all
to college
things
for
used
4 to 12 of the most prime years of your life.
Stop the insanity! It's 2023, and there's a much better way to get an education. Helping you start and grow your own business and creating wealth for you and your family is our top priority. Each day, you'll be taught by multi-millionaire business owners who have been where you want to go and can show you how to get there. Graduate rich, not broke. Follow and start listening to the Millionaire University podcast today. Hey, what's going on, my fellow and future millionaires? Justin Williams here, and welcome to another episode of the Millionaire University podcast. In today's business lesson, we'll be talking about the aggregation of marginal gains and how understanding and applying this principle can and will help you explode your business. The aggregation of marginal gains is a concept that James Clear talks about in the first chapter of his book, Atomic Habits. I will begin today's lesson by reading and paraphrasing part of that chapter, and then we'll dive into business application. Between 1908 and 2003, the British cycling organization wasn't doing so hot. In nearly a 100-year period, they won one single gold medal and not one Tour de France in over 110 years. And if you know anything about the Brits, they like to dominate, and I'm pretty sure Queen Elizabeth was just not having any of it. In fact, these guys were so bad that one of the top bike manufacturers in Europe refused to sell the British team bikes in fear that other teams would see that they were using their gear and it would damage their reputation. But the Brits were determined to change the trajectory of their less than stellar cycling performance. And in 2003, they hired a man by the name of David Brailsford as their new performance director. What made Brailsford different from previous coaches was his relentless commitment to a strategy he referred to as the aggregation of marginal gains, which was the philosophy of searching for a tiny margin of improvement in everything you do. Brailsford said the whole principle came from the idea that if you broke down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike and then improve it by 1%, you will get a significant increase when you put them all together. Brailsford and his coaches began by making small adjustments that you might expect from a professional cycling team. They redesigned the bike seats to make them more comfortable and rubbed alcohol on the tires for a better grip. They had the riders wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain ideal muscle temperature while riding and use biofeed sensors to monitor how each athlete responded to a particular workout. The team tested fabrics in a wind tunnel and had their outdoor riders switch to indoor racing suits, which proved to be lighter and more aerodynamic. But they didn't stop there. Brailsford and his team continued to find 1% improvements in overlooked and unexpected areas. They tested different types of massage gels to see which one led to the fastest muscle recovery. They hired a surgeon to teach each rider the best way to wash their hands to reduce the chances of catching a cold. They also determined the type of pillow and mattress that led to the best night's sleep for each rider. Maybe I should check that out. Then they even painted the inside of the team truck white, which helped them spot little bits of dust that unnoticed could degrade the performance of the finely tuned bikes. Sheesh! As these and hundreds of other small improvements accumulated, the results came faster than anyone could have imagined. In just 5 years after Brailsford took over, the British cycling team dominated cycling events at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, where they won 60% of all gold medals available at that year's Olympic Games. 4 years later, when the Olympics were held in their very own home country, the Brits dominated once again, setting 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. That very same year, Bradley Wiggins became the very first British cyclist to win the Tour de France. The next year, his teammate Chris Froome won the race, and he would go on to win again in 2015, 16, and 17. During the 10-year span from 2007 to 2017, British cyclists won 178 world championships and 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals and captured 5 Tour de France victories in what is wildly regarded as the most successful run in cycling history. Boom, baby! So how does this happen? How does a team of previously ordinary athletes transform into world champions with tiny changes that at first glance would seem to make a modest difference at best? Why do small improvements accumulate into such remarkable results? And how can you replicate this approach in your life? James Clear goes on to say, "It is so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. Too often, we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. Whether it is losing weight, building a business, writing a book, winning a championship, or achieving any other goal, we put pressure on ourselves to make some earth-shattering improvement that everyone will talk about. Meanwhile, improving by 1% isn't only not notable, sometimes it isn't even noticeable. But it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. The difference a tiny improvement can make over time is astounding." So now let's talk about the aggregation of marginal gains as it applies to business. Just like most businesses, in our past education business, most of our clients were focusing on three things: lead generation, lead conversion, and fulfillment. In this case, fulfillment was more of sales fulfillment, since they were buying at a certain price and trying to sell it at a higher price. My team and I coached hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were all in the exact same industry. And just like any other industry, there were some that would have massive success, making millions of dollars every single year. And there were others that would crash and burn and not make anything. And it had absolutely nothing to do with their specific skills in this specific industry. In fact, the same people that succeeded to a very high degree in this industry would have dominated any industry they entered into. So what was the difference? What was it that caused some to make millions of dollars and others to, well, not do so great? This was the difference. And I'm going to say it slowly because it's so simple and straightforward that you just might miss it. The people who succeeded at an extremely high level did enough things good enough. I'm going to repeat that again. They did enough things good enough. So for example, when it came to their marketing, they were constantly tweaking small little things to improve their response rate. They were constantly looking for ways to reduce the cost of marketing by small percentages so they could spend more to get the same result. For incoming leads, they made sure that they answered the calls live, and they would respond to any online leads within 5 minutes. They'd work with their sales team to get the best conversions possible. And a good follow-up system would improve profitability by anywhere from 20 to 50%. The thing is, nobody did things exactly the same, and no one business model or system was perfect. It didn't have to be. In fact, it didn't even have to be the best in the world or the best in their region. It just had to be good enough to where they had a predictable, profitable business model. So for example, let's say that there were 3 companies that were each spending $10,000 per month on marketing. Company A didn't focus on maximizing the return on their marketing message. They didn't take calls live, and they took a day or two to get back to prospect clients. They didn't work on their sales skills, and they had 0 to no follow-up. Over a year, this company would spend $120,000 and probably make 30, 50, 60, maybe. Not a very good business model. Company B sometimes took calls live, took a couple hours to get back to online leads, and maybe did very minimal follow-up. With the 120 spend, they would maybe break even, maybe make a little bit of money, but probably not enough to live a very happy, fulfilled life. And then Company C did all the things that we've talked about, and then some. We're not covering every little detail here, just an example. And they didn't do everything perfectly, but they did enough good enough. This company would most likely 3x their investment, meaning they would make $360,000 on a 120 spend, which would mean they'd have more profit to invest back into the company, allowing them to get to a high 6 figures and eventually a 7-figure plus company. Clear says habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. The same way that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. They seem to make little difference on any given day, and yet the impact they deliver over the months and years can be enormous. I remember back in 2013 when Tara and I started our first online education business. James Clear had just started writing his blog 1 year prior on habits and how they can affect our lives. He wrote a post twice a week, every week for years. After a few months, this simple writing habit led him to getting 1,000 email subscribers. By the end of 2013, which is when I started to hear about him, that number had grown to more than 30,000 people. In 2014, he had over 100,000 subscribers. And in 2015, he had over 200,000 subscribers, signed a deal to write the book that we are now talking about, Atomic Habits, which has sold millions of copies and went on to become a #1 New York Times bestseller. similar. His business is thriving. He has a massive audience. He helps millions of people, and he'll never want for financial means again. Clear said that in the beginning, he felt like an imposter. He did not consider himself an expert on habits, but rather someone who was experimenting alongside a few readers and sharing the things that he had learned and was continuing to learn. But it was his consistent and persistent actions, constantly improving just by a little bit, constantly learning, constantly growing himself and his audience. It was the aggregation of all the marginal gains that he put in that has led him and so many others to the success that they currently have today. And you can have that same success as well. What are the tiny improvements you can make in your business that when added up can help you get a massive result? You don't have to do it all at once. Just put one foot in front of the other and do one thing at a time. Consistent and persistent. And before you know it, you'll start to get traction. And soon you'll hit that proverbial hockey stick and start to experience exponential growth. And when people approach you and want to know, how did you become an overnight success? You'll just kind of laugh to yourself and say, the aggregation of marginal gains. Alrighty, well, that brings us to the end of another lesson and episode of Millionaire University. If you like today's episode, we hope you will share with a friend. And if you have yet to get our free business training, go to millionaireuniversity.com/training. And in about 1 hour, you'll know more than most MBAs. Other than that, keep a cranking, keep taking action, one step at a time towards reaching your financial goals and making your dreams a reality. Until next time, this is your millionaire mentor, Justin Williams, signing off.